All right, so there's no one wishing to speak or?
Wish to speak, please raise your hand in the chat box.
All right, well, we'll move on then to our mayor's report.
There is a hand raised.
I'm sorry, so that just came up, Counselor. Ms. Tony Trueheart, ma'am. Ms. Trueheart, can you just give your name and your address, please?
Is Antoinette Trueheart, 913 Myra Avenue. And my concern is the meeting that we had was held at the Mayor's Forum regarding the medical marijuana facility that is planning to be opened on Church Lane. And my concern is, how did this come about to be approved? Because the gentleman who came to speak to us via Zoom kept referring to a person that, or persons that approved this, and that a study was done of some sort to determine that we were an underserved community. So therefore it should be there. This was a good place for it to be. And I really don't understand the process and why this wasn't presented to the citizens prior to that time, because that location is absolutely not a good location to have such a facility in a residential area. Was a traffic study done, because the traffic will be horrendous, and there's going to have to be security. And it is a place where not only the residents live, children play, children are walking back and forth to school. And I really don't quite understand how something of this magnitude could be brought to the fore and approval made, and we're just hearing about it now. And again, who was the person who they dealt with to get such an approval done for this community?
All right, thank you, Ms. Trueheart. I do plan on addressing this in the president's report, and it will, I hope it will resolve your questions. But so thank you for your comment.
I do not see any other hands raised at this time.
All right. At this time, we'll move on to our mayor's report.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. My report stands as submitted. I will underscore a couple of things. I'll keep the marijuana dispensary of my comments last. Just wanted to notify the public, the residents, that most of you do know the schools are opened. William Penn School District has opened this week. Officially, we are doing, or they are doing, in-person learning, but they are requiring masks to be worn throughout the day. A little bit of the virus and vaccine update. As you know, the optimism of the spring and early summer has given way to a concern around the country, where we're seeing an uptick of COVID. A lot of it due to folks that are haven't been vaccinated. So I just wanted to underscore the fact that vaccines are still available, and you could schedule a shot by going into a pharmacy. Actually, it's really easy, but we're still doing vaccines at our wellness center here in Yeadon, and there's a number you could call. I have it in my report, as well as on the website. So there's a number of ways to get the vaccine. It's really easy. You could actually walk into almost any pharmacy right now. As far as the booster shots are concerned, booster shots are available in many pharmacies for those who are immunity compromised. Not at the wellness center. They're not doing booster shots at this time. They will be in short order, but any CVS, Walgreens, or Acme Pharmacy are giving out booster shots to those who are immunity compromised and have taken both shots of the Moderna or Pfizer vaccines. Just want to also underscore the fact that on Saturday we'll be commemorating the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Of course, we're not doing anything, but the flag, Borough flag, will be flown at half staff to recognize that that infamous 20-year anniversary. As far as the marijuana dispensary is concerned, when I found out that it was coming, and I, speaking to some counselors, and I did mention that, the best way to notify the public would be at the mayor's forum, because it was 3 weeks before the mayor's forum, around 3 weeks, that we realized, or I realized, that it's actually coming, or it's slated to come, and that we needed to notify the residents. So again, I've taken a lot of heat for not notifying the residents. It was my meeting, it's my mayor's forum. I arranged it as such. We had about 150 to 200 residents, I would say, that attended by my estimation. Another 60 or so in line. So it did generate a lot of concern from residents, and we wanted to provide that that opportunity to notify the residents and to field their concerns. Stemming from that, some concerned residents arranged a protest at that site. A couple of days later, on Saturday, the 4th, about 60 or 70 people attended, and there were other demonstrations, I believe, throughout the week. And the same group is organizing a follow-up march on Saturday, this Saturday, September 11th, from the Borough Hall to the site at Church and Gunther. That's all I have for my written report. If there are any questions.
Madam President, I know this is Councilor Clara Johnson. May I speak? Please speak.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. You're recognized.
I realized that you did say that you were going to address some of the issues around the center, the marijuana medical center that's coming. But in light of the fact that the mayor did bring it up, I'd like to ask the mayor a question, if that's permissible.
Thank you.
Mayor, I hear you say that there was 150 to 200 people in attendance. Can you kind of like break that number down? Because you had 3 different components. You had people in person at the Borough Hall, yet people on the phone, such as myself, and you also had people on Zoom. So how many residents do you think were at the Borough for your mayor's forum?
Yeah, I did try to break that down. I would say 150 to 200 people in person. We social distance, and virtual about 60, in the low 60s. That's virtual via Zoom and phone. So up to about 250 people in total.
And where was the in-person meeting held?
It's in my report. It was held in the Borough Auditorium on the 2nd floor.
and you did say social distancing, which was really great. I think that was a great positive. However, did we have anyone there to actually ask, have you been vaccinated? Did they take a temperature? Because it was quite a few people in that area. And my concern, because I'm not coming back into the borough because of the social distancing and because of the variants and things that's out there. But my concern is for the workers and for the other people that was there, because that was a tight gathering. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
We're on the same mandate of restaurants, the school district, where we could gather, wear a mask, and adhering to social distancing guidelines. So it's no different than if you went to a restaurant or most schools.
Well, I don't mean to debate you, Mayor, but I can't see it being the same, because at a restaurant they do have, people there to say certain things, and I don't know if anyone was there for the gathering, but that's not a question. That was just
Okay.
me
So
talking.
thank you, Councilor Johnson. We can, well, going forward.
Yeah,
we'll
we
make
could talk. We could talk
No,
about
that's-
that offline. The bottom line is that I got a lot of requests for an in-person gathering, because a lot of residents thought it was a better give and take. So I weighed that against the common practices with the governor's order mandate, and I felt that we could do it. I made that judgment call. We could do it safely if we adhere to that. Everybody wore a mask. We did separate the chairs and had proper spacing to accommodate the meeting. And again, we could talk about it offline, but that was the balance. And I weighed it against what the governor was doing in the state and what other businesses were doing.
That's fine, and thank you, Madam President. That's the end of what concerned me.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. So we'll move on to our president's report. And I will begin my discussion with the medical marijuana pharmacy. I understand that it was at the mayor's forum that it was insinuated that there was someone in the borough that received some type of kickback regarding the granting of the zoning permit that was required by law. Not only is this very untrue, it's false, and it's really a slap in the face to the hardworking people of our borough. It's also a fact that Councilor Roadcloud and Mayor Hopkins both know as former zoning board members that council has very little to do with the zoning code official's job. It's purposely set this way so that one branch of government doesn't have complete autonomy. Council knew about the application for the medical marijuana pharmacy only when the application was filed with our code department. Our code director advised us and subsequently kept us informed monthly in written and verbal reports during our caucus and legislative sessions about the status of their application. Council consulted with our solicitor to determine if there was any action we could take, and we were advised that the issue was a zoning matter with a set of laws enacted by the state. Interfering or discriminating against an applicant would be considered unlawful. I went through all of my emails. I went through our meeting minutes. I went through our code reports, and I went through our police reports. We had all the relevant information. It was emailed to every counselor. It was emailed to our mayor. We all had the information. I've also heard accusations that there were some secret meetings related to this business.
Mm-hmm.
That is really a false rumor that needs to end. There was no meeting because the council had no action to take. Ms. Trueheart referred to this did not come to the floor for a vote. This was not something that council could vote on. This was not something that was brought to the council floor. This was council and our mayor being advised of an application that could be filed, that was filed. And the determination was made about whether this was a lawful application that could move forward or if it did not meet the criteria of the law. This business met the criteria of the law. That is not to say that council supports or does not support. The only thing that this says is that this applicant met the criteria of the law to move forward. In dealing with this new business, our code and police departments plan to work closely with the owners of the establishment to assure that all borough ordinances are adhered to and the quality of life of our residents is not negatively affected. This pharmacy is in our business district. This portion of Church Lane, while it is near residents, is our only business corridor. It was previously a Citizens Bank, where much like the pharmacy, there may have been armed guards. Where much like the pharmacy, there would have been large amounts of cash to protect. And much like the pharmacy, would also have a drive-through that would need to be managed. Now, prior to this application being submitted or approved by our zoning official, our police chief already had plans to address previously existing traffic patterns in that area to minimize accidents and traffic jams, mainly due to the number of drunk drivers that were up and down Church Lane causing accidents. I really hope that for Yeadon's sake, we can move beyond the shock and hysteria and work together in a meaningful manner to make sure that if this business comes to our community, that we are not affected in all of the ways that many of us are afraid of. Next, I'd like to report out on the dates and instances where this medical marijuana dispensary was mentioned in our meeting minutes. September 10th, 2020, 1 year from tomorrow, our code department reported that there was an application submitted for the building formerly occupied by Citizens Bank to have a medical marijuana dispensary. At that time, Councilor Roadcloud inquired about the contractors leaving debris at work sites, common driveways, and an ordinance for medical marijuana dispensaries. Mr. Stokes responded that the medical marijuana dispensary location is zoned for that type of business. Under the borough zoning, there is nothing listed specifically for medical marijuana. In the past, municipalities requested the state to put an ordinance in place to not have this type of business in their areas. Our solicitor then stated that he was not prepared to discuss the matter at that meeting, but would review the application and report back to caucus. Back to council. He also added that the borough had an ordinance, but it may not be legally enforceable because medical marijuana facilities have been zoned in the state and ordained as a medical facility, similar to a pharmacy and doctor's office. Mr. Stokes was asked to send all information regarding the medical marijuana dispensary to council. President Monroe stated that management would make sure that all of the information came to council once it was reviewed. We are still in September of 2020. We went on to discuss how the medical marijuana facilities are a new phenomenon in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and it's not unusual for there not to be a specific law or ordinance addressing the matter. On October 15th, 2020, at our legislative session, council, the solicitor, the chief discussed medical marijuana usage, possession, and how it will be regulated. The solicitor stated in his motion that the police agenda item relating to the consideration to develop an ordinance for small amounts of marijuana violations would result in traffic violations. Again, this is October of 2020 that we're continuing a discussion about medical marijuana and trying to be proactive and prepared should the state allow this application to be approved for our community. In November 19, 2020, the medical marijuana dispensary at the former Citizens Bank building, commercial building on 517 Church Lane, the farmer's market, all of these things were discussed in our meeting. The mayor, Mr. Stokes, our solicitor and council discussed the facility and also the impact of the traffic at Majors Market, which is under a new name now, on Church Lane. This is all in our December 2020 meeting. And this is, again, us being proactive, understanding the impact that this business would have on our community should it be approved. December 10th, 2020, the application was approved, and we were informed that the application was approved, and the owner of the property was purchasing permits for renovation. And later in that meeting, our code enforcement director and the solicitor discussed the facility at 735 Church Lane that would be the future medical marijuana facility. All of this information is also in our code reports. And then there was a lull in the discussion. And on June 17, 2021, 735 Church Lane submitted plans for renovations that were being reviewed by a third-party contractor. The mayor and council discussed the medical marijuana dispensary. A resident, Cynthia Nesmith, asked to comment and discussed her concerns. Mr. Stokes explained that the information was provided to everyone and there was nothing in the zoning ordinance that prevented the facility. Chief Paparo stated, under the law, a medical marijuana facility must be must be no less than 1,000 feet from a school or daycare facility. Our chief subsequently made sure that the measurements were done, and our code director, that the measurements were accurate as the crow flies was the newest term that we learned, that it wasn't just about walking the street, it was as the crow flies, the shortest distance. And this facility was a little over 1,000 feet from the nearest school or daycare facility. In our police reports, we had additional conversations, and the chief informed us about different items relating to medical marijuana dispensaries, provided information in his most recent report, provided information about the Pennsylvania code related to marijuana dispensaries. And Ms. Trueheart, when you spoke about our community being underserved, in reading these bulletins, that's a term that's used in where the state will allow or will approve a facility to be, which would just mean that we were underserved by this type of business. Not that we are an underserved community as a whole, but you wouldn't have two of these types of pharmacies within the same block. So that's where I believe that underserved came from, that it was referencing the language in the state law, not necessarily the Yeadon community. At this time, I really think that we have to work together, regardless of how our individual opinions about this facility. We have to come together as a community to make sure that if this does come to our community, that it is managed appropriately and that it does not negatively impact our community. And I just have to reiterate one more time that this discussion has been happening over nearly 1 year tomorrow. Our chief of police invited our district attorney, Jack Stolzheimer, to his Good Morning Yeadon segment. It was posted on Nextdoor. It's in our newsletter. It's on our website. And at that meeting, we had a discussion with the DA and asked him very specific questions about what he knew about medical marijuana dispensaries to get more information out to our community. And one of the questions that stuck out to me was, is there an increase of crime in the areas where medical marijuana dispensaries exist? His answer was that the data said no. There are typically armed guards around these facilities, much like if the facility had remained a bank. Our mayor followed up with the forum to have the community out to be informed about this discussion, but it was not council did not have authority to vote on or veto any action related to this medical marijuana dispensary. That ends my report. At this time, we will move on to
I have a question.
Councilor Jones Waters.
As council president, why did you not have a meeting with the community once it was approved? Every resident in this community should have been heard to say whether they wanted it or not. It has nothing to do with if this business was state regulated. It has nothing to do with that. We owe it to the community for the community to be heard on this controversial business. There's no reason why we shouldn't have had an open forum with the community about the marijuana dispensary.
Okay, so thank you, Councilor Jones Waters. However, we did have meetings. All of our caucus meetings were public. Our legislative meetings were public. Our chief of police followed up with a meeting for the public, and our mayor followed up with the meeting for the public. If any of your residents that you interact with required something additional, you were more than welcome to host the meeting as well. But as a council, as the mayor, as a borough, there were also code meetings that were held, community meetings where this information was discussed. What we did not do, which I think you're insinuating, is put out a community alert about this business. Like that would have been a discriminatory action against this business.
That
This
is not
information
good.
is documented in our meeting minutes, in our code reports, as well as in our police reports. We've had no less than 8 public meetings where this information was discussed. So thank you. We will move on now to our
No, I
manager's
actually have a
report.
question. I actually have a statement and a question with respect to this issue as well. So I do appreciate
Councilor
you.
Rowe, you are recognized.
I appreciate you going through the timeline. However, my interpretation of the meeting minutes does not align with your interpretation. Now, when I first heard of this dispensary coming, it was in September, on September 10th, 2020. And at that time, it was presented to council as if it was just the business owners was thinking about it. And an application was filed. So when it was said that the application was filed, I asked if I could get a copy of the application so that I could personally review same. Then the solicitor said he did not have the application, or he hasn't had a chance to review same, and he could not speak upon same at this forum. He didn't feel comfortable at that date to speak because he didn't review. Then you advised management to forward a copy of the completed paperwork to all counselors upon review. That was in September. In October, according to the minutes, there was no discussion about this facility. The only thing I saw was in a code report where it said, still waiting for feedback from the solicitor. At this point, I'm still under the impression that we're waiting for some feedback and there's no movement. Then we also spoke about small offenses with respect to marijuana, but it was not with respect to the facility. It was with respect to decriminalizing people getting caught with small amounts of marijuana. Nothing was mentioned about the facility. It was simply to pass an ordinance with respect to decriminalizing small amounts of marijuana. So that is a misstatement. It had nothing to do with the facility itself. It was just to pass an ordinance for the police so they don't have to, so they can decriminalize any charges. Now, November, nothing was said. I didn't read, and maybe you have some different minutes. I didn't see anything in there about medical marijuana facility.
November 19th, 2020, section 3A and section 8.
And what does it say?
It says the medical marijuana dispensary at the former Citizens Bank building was discussed. The commercial building on 517 Church Lane was discussed, and a car crashed into a deck at 606 Yeadon Avenue. The deck repairs were almost complete. That's what came out of the report. And then in the notes, it also says the mayor, Mr. Stokes, the solicitor, and council briefly discussed the medical marijuana facility and the former Majors Market building on Church Lane.
Okay, a discussion. So we had a very in-depth discussion in September. So why wouldn't we have the same in-depth discussion in November if it was said this is definitely going to happen? And at that meeting, at that time, that facility wasn't even, it wasn't even approved. It was not approved until, wait a minute, let me talk, please. I respect your time, respect mine. So at that meeting, That facility wasn't approved at all. At
But
all.
it was.
It was a
That's a
discussion
misstatement.
about what? What was it?
That's a misstatement. The facility, the application for the dispensary was approved under the action items in 10/2020. That's when it was
that
approved.
intent? No, the paperwork says it was approved November, the end of November. That's what this paperwork says that I received. It was approved, and I
Okay.
just received that paperwork last week. So from the time that you advised management to send to all counselors the information when it was completed, I'm still under the impression, I don't know about nobody else, but I'm still under the impression it's just an idea. The paperwork hasn't been completed because I didn't receive anything. And in addition to that, when you, myself, and the mayor had a meeting with Joanna McClinton in April of May of 2021, when we discussed bringing a Starbucks possibly to that very location, at no point in time did you say, oh, that location is already being occupied. So I say that to say, why would I waste my time, your time, the mayor time, the state rep's time to talk about bringing a business to the very location that we allegedly already knew was going to be occupied by this medical marijuana facility? So no, I did not know about this. It was only discussed in depth on September 10th, 2020. In depth. And that's when a majority of council was like, no, we're not having that. We don't want that. Not there. And basically it was left with, when the applications are completed, paperwork's completed, everybody's going to get a copy of same. I didn't get a copy of anything until last week. And it was hand delivered by the code department. So that's just one of my issues. The
So
second
Councilor
issue,
Rothschild, if I could.
no, this is a caucus, and allow me to finish my thought, please. Because I don't want to, go back and forth. I don't want to do that. I already have a bad rap. So I'm trying to do this in a mature, professional manner. My next issue is, you mentioned something about zoning. There was a zoning issue that needed to be researched. So we have a whole zoning board attorney who represents the zoning board. Why wasn't that attorney at least consulted when it was a consensus that the community did not want this type of business in that location? Whenever there's a controversial business coming to a community, the community absolutely has the right to know about same. That's why it's called community. So we can make a decision, a conscious, educated decision as to how this business in our community is going to affect us, be it positively or negatively. So no, we may not have a written law saying we should do that, but there is an unspoken law that says we should. And that didn't happen right now. It didn't happen. So I don't know who said who was getting kickbacks or backdoor deal. I don't know. And at this point, it doesn't matter because the damage is already done. But my point right now is whatever happened, it was wrong. And we want to make sure it does not repeat itself. We should have had ordinances back on the books 10 years ago when these facilities were being discussed and thought about becoming legalized. That didn't happen. I'm the code liaison. 2020, you canceled all code meetings. No one came to me and said, well, this is what's going on. Nobody sent me a report and said, this is what's going on. Nobody said anything. So again, Everybody on this council did not know. I'm one of those folks, and it's not right. Now, we got to own up to what we individually did, if we did anything, and we got to rectify it. Like I said, how this came about was so inappropriate. So inappropriate. We can bring a medical marijuana facility to the community before we bring some food, a supermarket, a coffee shop. Now, I done spoke my piece.
Thank you, Councilor Roadcloud. With respect to the Starbucks conversation that we had in May of 2021, I can assure you that at that time, there was an application that was approved by the zoning officials, but there were no plans to move forward at that time. The plans that were submitted were discussed in June of 2021. At that time, we did not know that the facility was moving forward with construction or with plans. Again, the plans that they submitted in June were being reviewed by a third-party contractor at that time. We had our Starbucks meeting in May, and we were trying to bring another business to the community. We did not. We as council, we as the mayor, we did not bring this business to the community.
What was
As
approved
far
in
as Councilor Roadcloud,
November
Councilor
23rd,
Roadcloud,
2020? What was
Councilor
approved?
Roadcloud, you're
What
out
was
of order.
improved in November?
You said your piece.
But it was not correct when you said it was approved in
Councilor
June. It
Roadcloud,
was
when you were not
It was
correct,
approved.
you're out of order.
I
Because
have
when
the
you were not
paperwork.
correct,
I
I
have the
allowed you.
paperwork. Okay, let me get the
When
paperwork.
you were out of
Let me get
order,
I'll
you
get
were
the
out of
paperwork
order,
for you.
Councilor Roadcloud.
Okay,
I'm gonna
I'll get the
ask you
paperwork.
I'm gonna ask you to refrain. Thank you. So when we were in November of 2020, the zoning application was approved. If a zoning application is approved, they then have to follow up with the state application. That is not a process that we go through. If you read through the medical marijuana dispensary code that the chief has made available for us in his police report, you'll see in the code that it says after receipt that having appropriate zoning is one portion of their application. At that time, the zoning was approved, but they had many more items to follow up with the state for them to move forward, which is why at that time, one of the items is also a lease for the facility that they would be using. At that time, there was not a lease because we were still discussing the facility becoming a Starbucks with the owners of the former Citizens Bank property. Additionally, code meetings were not canceled. We made the suggestion due to COVID that all meetings be held virtually. Some committees chose not to hold meetings virtually. At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Gibbs to address why we did not consult the attorney from the zoning board.
The zoning board, good evening, everyone. The zoning board solicitor advised. He doesn't advise the zoning code official unless there's an appeal from the zoning code official's decision. The borough is a party. So it's my opinion that the solicitor for the borough is the person appointed by council, not the person appointed by the zoning board. There was nothing before the zoning board because the zoning ordinance was clear as it relates to pharmacies and medical facilities in this particular case.
Okay, and can I also ask, Mr. Gibbs, may I also ask, what role is it that council plays with a zoning application? Can you please confirm from your legal perspective, our involvement as well as the expectation and liability should we go out, should we go outside of our purview.
The municipal planning code gives very limited authority to the governing body, which would be the council. In this particular application, there was nothing for the council to actually approve. The council somehow directed Mr. Stokes not to approve it with some type of ordinance. We would be sued and compelled to perform because the zoning code allows for pharmacies. When the legislature, Pennsylvania House and Senate and governor passed the Medical Marijuana Act, they did so, and they said in there that all the zoning determinations would have to be done without any special consideration to the type of business. It had to be considered as a pharmacy. The council had no authority to do anything. And
All right.
thank you.
And lastly, in our meeting minutes, it kind of leaves off, but doesn't pick back up where council is waiting on. Well, first, I'd like to say that I did not direct our code officer to submit the application itself to all of council. What I said is that, and what is documented in the minutes, is that they would keep us apprised of all information relating to the matter, not specifically send us the application. And keep us advised, they did on a monthly basis in written and verbal reports at our public meetings. So with that, I'd like for our solicitor.
I have a question for Mr. Gibbs. I have a question for Mr. Gibbs.
I'll acknowledge you in one moment, ma'am. So, Mr. Gibbs, I'd like for you to follow up with our, as an addition to our meeting minutes, where it says that we were waiting on information about from the solicitor. What information that you subsequently provided to council?
I know I've discussed this issue in numerous council meetings, but when I read the meeting minutes, I take it that Mr. Stokes was waiting for information from me. And Mr. Stokes asked, was it Pennsylvania law that a medical marijuana facility is deemed a medical facility and thus would fit into a doctor's office or pharmacy? And I gave legal advice that is supported by case law and an interpretation of the statute that in fact, that is correct. Councilor Roadcloud did ask to talk about ordinances, and she and I had a discussion over the weekend, and we've had a lot of discussions since, and we did not follow up about the medical marijuana ordinance. And that's something we can actually work on, but we couldn't have done anything about the application that was submitted because that application, we can't just spot zone and change the zoning law. What was the second part of your question, ma'am?
I'm not sure, but I do have a subsequent one, and this will be my last one for the evening before I recognize Councilor Jones Waters. Once the zoning application was approved, is it mandatory that the business owner take that approval and follow through with a state application?
No, there's nothing that requires that.
So this is where we know that the zoning application was approved, but no plans have been submitted, which is why the owner of the Citizens Bank, the former Citizens Bank property, was still in conversation with council and with our state rep about bringing in a Starbucks. So there are portions to this. It wasn't a farce that we had a conversation about a Starbucks. It was because they had not presented their plans to move forward at that time. So yes, they had an approval from zoning, but there were several more approvals required that were not involving, it did not involve council.
So,
Am I explaining this correctly, sir?
Yes.
Madam President, to that
I'm sorry,
point,
Mr. Mayor, can Mr. Gibbs answer this question, and then I'll recognize Councilor Jones Waters, and then I'll recognize you, please.
That's correct. And I also want to add, it is not uncommon for Mr. Stokes to consult with me multiple times a month about questions about permitting and applications. There are tons of zoning applications that he grants because when the zoning code is broken down into 3 different categories. It's broken into uses that are by right. And in this particular zoning area, it is a by right use to have a medical office or a medical facility. There are also things that are conditional uses. Conditional uses are those limited areas when council would have to give some type of approval. Then there are things that are prohibited uses, things that you can't do in this area. For example, in a residential neighborhood, you can't make dynamite. The zoning board is often there for variances because the zoning code is rather strict of what you can and can't do. And when you have something that's a variance from the zoning code, the zoning board would often make that decision. There are also special permits the zoning board can give, but this particular facility did not fit into any of those categories. I also had a conversation with the mayor over the weekend, and we went through the zoning code about where it could be and where it couldn't be. And the zoning code, the language in it is rather clear about what a permitted use is in this particular area.
All right. Counselor Jones Waters, you're recognized for the question that you have for Mr. Gibbs.
Mr. Gibbs,
Good evening, ma'am.
good evening. Are you aware of any other communities that stopped this type of business, even though the act was allowed, according to you, for them to move forward?
I'm going to try to answer that question. I am aware of litigation that's happened, and one of the things I did when I was looking at Mr. Stokes's request is check Commonwealth Court and Supreme Court opinions to see if there were any legal maneuvers. And frankly, in a by right use, there were no legal maneuvers. What I found were multiple municipalities being sanctioned, fined in order to grant a zoning use permit.
Well, what exactly did they do? Because we need to do that.
They lost. I don't want to do something and lose and be ordered to do something.
Thank you.
I
Mr.
have
Mayor?
a question for Mr. After the mayor, he did ask. Mhm.
Yeah, I just wanted to clear up something. In your deliberations or explanation, Madam President, I believe you said that there was an initial approval from our code standpoint, from Director Stokes, but that we were, and that was in last fall, whether it's September, October, November timeframe of last year, but that there's no formal go-ahead until the state also approves it, which only came in June of this year. Is that what I understand you said?
So I think there are a few things kind of mixed in that statement. Mr. Stokes is our code director, but he's also our state zoning official. So he does hold several roles. As our code enforcement officer, he's also our zoning official. So, but it's not just that it was, this was if you look into the medical marijuana code that's provided in the police report, there are steps in the process. One of the steps is to obtain a zoning use permit from the municipality where you plan to have the facility. And then there's a laundry list of other requirements that they have to meet that has absolutely nothing to do with our borough. For instance, having a lease, for instance, paying a $200,000 application fee. For instance, doing some of the studies that were mentioned by our resident, Ms. Trueheart. Those are different items that have to be met, but those items don't have anything to do with the borough. Mr. Gibbs, am I explaining that correctly from your understanding of the code for the facility?
So far, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Madam President, I'm just saying that, I know there's a lot of different angles to this. I was just focusing on the angle that would explain if, why the late going to the public or notifying the public, because according to the process as I'm hearing it, there was an initial approval by our director in the fall, but it wasn't until June of this year what I'm hearing, that the state gave the final okay, which put everything finally in motion. That's what I'm trying to.
Yes,
Okay, so then that makes sense, because right now, how we're explaining it to the public, or there's a little ambiguity here where it seems like we're all informed, everything was a go in the fall, and then no one did anything. And what I'm hearing in going through the process, that was just the initial application of this, that they applied the marijuana dispensary, and but other things needed to take place. One, the solicitor was looking into some legalities, and then the state was the other shoe to drop, but that didn't happen till June.
that's correct.
Okay.
And if the applicant had failed any portion of the state's application, then we would still be considering other businesses there. So, or if they didn't have the funding to apply for the remaining permit, then there would not have been a final approval. And again, all of these approvals are out of our hands. Councilor Roadcloud, you had a question for Mr. Gibbs?
Sure, thank you. So yeah, I'm a little confused with respect to the state. I know there are some state requirements that they're obligated to fulfill, but I did hear something about a lease agreement. They didn't have a lease agreement at the time that they filed this application. Is that true?
I don't know. That's not something I would have evaluated. I'm not the code official. I answered just a really
Right.
good question.
So that wasn't that's one of the state requirements. I did not purport that was one of our zoning requirements.
Right.
That's one of the
So-
subsequent requirements of the state.
Right, so I do have in front of me an executed lease dated September 18th, 2020, with that business and the owner of that property. So when that was produced, that meant unequivocally they intended on definitely getting into that location to conduct the business that they applied for. So at that time, like I said, instead of it being presented as if, oh, they're just thinking about it, it was more than a thought. They were absolutely 100% sure this was what they were going to do. And at that time, we should have notified, had some sort of town hall with the community. And I say that because I hear that we didn't have to go before the zoning board. And I understand all of that because they were within the confines of our zoning ordinances, they were, eligible to be there. But because it is a new type of business that comes with a lot of restrictions, another concern is they can't be within 1,000 feet of a daycare, a school, basically anything dealing with children. So if I'm a property owner right down the street and I want to sell my building and someone say, yeah, I want to buy that building because I intend to have a little daycare here or a little tutoring situation here, now I'm prohibited. If someone, a resident in that area within 1,000 feet, they want to open up a little at-home daycare just to try to make a little ends meet, they're prohibited now? So now
At-home daycares are prohibited in Yeadon altogether.
Okay, so at-home daycare is prohibited. I just seen something in the code report about something about going, I got to read it a little more about somebody apply for at-home daycare. But okay, the building right down the street. So we're prohibited. Anybody within that 1,000 feet of that facility cannot operate anything legally with respect to children. No schools, no daycares, no tutoring facilities, no after-school facilities, nothing. So we literally just tied all the property owners' hands in 1,000 feet of that facility, just so that facility can be comfortable
No,
and
ma'am,
what
we
they
did
wanna
not.
do. So
did not.
so
We had
that's
no
what-
authority. We
That's
had
what
no
Mr.
legal
Gibbs answered.
authority
This is a
to
legal
prevent
question. So,
anything.
Mr. Gibbs, so where are we with respect to that? So are the property owners, especially the commercial property owners, are their hands tied if they choose to turn their business into some sort of daycare, after-school care, tutoring facility, anything involving children? How does that affect them?
I'm not prepared to answer that at this time. I understand the.
Okay, but
Let me
that's
finish.
one of my questions, and that is another concern of mine.
Okay,
And like I said, it was absolutely back in September, it was known for sure, that these people were going to come in and open up this type of business. But it was relayed to us on that day as if it was just an idea. Like, we're just thinking.
No, ma'am,
about
it was not. It was an application for zone. It was an application for use. And we did not do that. This is the only portion that we could have been involved in was the zoning portion by the state.
Well,
Mr.
because
Gibbs,
it is
can you
what-
please
because of the
reconfirm, Mr. Gibbs, can you please reconfirm what
Because of the
could
questions that I
happen?
had, because of the questions that I have, I think we should have absolutely consulted our zoning attorney so that he would be able to answer some of these questions with respect to the other business owners in that vicinity. That's all I'm
Councilor
saying.
Road Cloud, it's been explained to you on several different occasions that that was not an option. But Mr. Gibbs, is there anything that we could have done that we should have done?
no.
I
Do
have a
we have
question.
any,
Mr.
do we
Gibbs.
have any legal authority to prevent this business from being in the establishment where it is?
Under the current code laws, no.
Is there,
I have a question for Mr. Gibbs.
Counselor Jones Waters, I will recognize you in one moment, please. Thank you. And I believe Counselor Cave may have had a question in the interim. But prior to you, I was not able to recognize him. So Counselor Cave, I'm not sure if you had something to contribute and I overlooked it.
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, Counselor Jones Waters, but please make sure that we are operating in order. Counselor Jones Waters, you're recognized.
So, Mr. Gibbs,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, so your position as the borough's solicitor is to give us sound advice. Is
Yep.
that correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
So I asked you, Mr. Gibbs, why did you not give that sound advice to council president to have an open forum, a hearing with this community about this establishment?
So my job is to give sound legal advice. And I gave sound legal advice to the zoning code official who asked a zoning code law interpretation. My job is not to give sound political community advice. I was actually very
It's not political. That's not political.
not legal though either, ma'am. There's nothing in the law to require the zoning code official to have a public announcement.
All right.
So in other words, you're saying even though this is a state regulated facility, that this council does not owe the community the right to be heard with a business coming to this community. Is that what you're telling me?
I don't have an opinion on that, ma'am. I only answer the legal question. I'm here for the legal work. That's not a legal question. I'm sorry.
So thank you, Counselor Jones Waters, for bringing that up because, we did have forums for our community
We
to
did
have
not.
this discussion.
We did not.
We had Jack Stolzheimer come as the DA for Delaware County with our police department to a Good Morning Yeadon segment that was
That is
announced
the
on that.
police department. That is the police
Counselor Jones
department
Waters, you
for his
are Counselor Jones
Department.
Waters, you are talking
It
out of
has
order.
nothing to do with
Counselor
you
Jones
as a
Waters, you
leader
are out of
to meet
order,
with
and
the
I'm gonna
community
ask that our
people.
secretary mute you if you don't respect the rules of order. So we did have an open forum there. We also had our mayor, who is the head of this community as well, to have an open forum where people could come and discuss, and they did come out and discuss.
That was a little too late.
Counselor Jones Waters, you are out of order. This is your second warning. So
Can I
we
comment?
had,
Can I comment on that? Okay, my one, I solicited the community to come because there was none heretofore, but any counselor, it's the elected officials' responsibility to inform the public. So to the extent that we didn't earlier, that's on us. It's not on the solicitor. That's not his job. His job is to advise us on legal matters. So anyone could have called a meeting. I happen to be the one to call the meeting. I don't want to be blamed when other counselors now blaming other people, and they didn't call a meeting. You could have called a meeting. Any counselor could have called a meeting.
Well, I need to tell you that I just found out. So I want to call a meeting on
Counselor,
something that I didn't
then
know.
you're
So
not
I-
reading your email,
and that's what
and
I
you're not
did.
present
I
at our
called-
meetings. But please don't interrupt the mayor and don't talk out of order.
I did the same thing. I found out, I called a meeting as soon as I found out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So at this time, we are going to move on to our manager's report.
I actually have one more question. One more quick question. It shouldn't cause any heartache.
Counselor Roadcloud,
When is this facility going to open?
I don't have that information.
I did ask, if I can, Madam President, I did ask that question at my mayor's forum to Director Stokes, and he says his understanding is as soon as they finish the renovations at the facility and they're ready to move in, he estimated within 2 months, about November. So that's just an estimate. Depends on how fast they go, but it's contingent upon as soon as they finish the renovations and are ready to move in, which should be about 2 months, he said.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll move on to our manager's report.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back, Council President. The items handled and announcements for tonight are that management, NDI, and Chief Paparo met with representatives from PennDOT and Traffic Planning and Design on 8/25 to discuss traffic signals and a water drainage issue on Rundale Avenue. The Delaware County Wellness Center and Health Partners Plans hosted a back-to-school event on 8/28 at the Wellness Center. Mayor Hempkins was in attendance and spoke in the pouring down rain. The county reported that it was a great event where over 183 backpacks were given to the children and 13 haircuts were provided before the rain. NDI management had a meeting with Mr. Banks from the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, DVRPC, on 9/2 to discuss the TA set-aside grant application. The mayor's forum was held on 9/2, both in person and virtually. Borough management's monthly meeting with NDI was held on 9/3. Updates on various issues and projects were discussed and will be addressed during the engineer's report. The unemployment compensation rate for 2022 will be 0.05, which is an increase from 2021 when it was 0.0285. Councilors Cave, Councilors Cave, Johnson, and Roadcloud, the solicitor and management, Mrs. Mulvana, the borough engineer, Mr. Stokes, and Mr. Wilkinson met on 9/7 to discuss potential changes to the shade tree ordinance. BNL reported that they are experiencing repeated issues of cars blocking driveways and alleyways, which affects their ability to collect the trash. Please remember to keep these areas clear on trash collection days and remind your neighbors to do the same. We received the check for $25,000 for the grant to help with Yeadon Communities Park's outdoor gym and the Love Garden. We should also be receiving soon a little over $4,000 for the recycling grant from 2019. And we're receiving money for the calendar. It's coming in, sponsorship for that as well. Items in progress. At the end of August, management was provided with information regarding SEPTA's trolley modernization project. SEPTA's trolley fleet has been in existence for several decades and is in need of improvements. As such, SEPTA will be adding new stations, trolleys, a shed facility, and improving existing stations with American with Disabilities Act platforms. That's the ADA. SEPTA plans on removing the stop at Chester Avenue and West Cobbs Creek Parkway within the next 3 to 4 years. SEPTA also plans on upgrading the stop at Chester Avenue and Church Lane to make it more pedestrian friendly as well as ADA compliant. The construction is expected to begin in 5 to 6 years. More information can be found in the DVRPC guide at www.dvrpc.org/15014.pdf. And this is online. If you do a search online, it'll come up. Management is in the process of obtaining manuals from the departments. This will aid in training and ensure departments are able to continue with operations when an employee is out. Newsletter articles are due by September 17th. Items to be addressed. The borough is in need of a storage area. Management recommends that the empty lot between Redwood Avenue and the Borough Hall parking lot be used to accommodate this need. Another person expressed interest in the vacant library board member position to serve as liaison to council. The information for all candidates was provided in the packet. The agenda for next week will have a motion for council's consideration as to this appointment. And that concludes the manager's report.
I have a question, please.
Counselor Roadcloud?
With respect to SEPTA canceling, moving the stop on McDade and Chester Avenue, did they give a reason why?
So they're doing studies. I did not have that conversation with SEPTA directly. Mr. DeFlavia from the Traffic Planning and Design was relaying that information to us. So we can reach out, find out who the contact is and see if they have, I'm thinking back to some of what I've read. I believe it was due to ridership possibly. They have a decreased ridership, so they don't feel that there's the need there, but we can confirm, try to figure out who the representative is and get an actual confirmation on that. And I know that they've been doing workshops and I think also conducting studies. So it's probably stemming from some of that work that they've done. I believe this began in 2017. So between 2017 till now, the workshops and different things that they've looked into is how they came to that assessment.
Okay, I only ask because I'm just thinking about all of the residents that utilize SEPTA on this side of Church Lane. On this side of Church Lane, a lot of the residents that utilize SEPTA utilize that stop there. So now if SEPTA decides to just cancel that stop altogether, you really want to have people coming all the way from Gunther Avenue or Fern Street, Cypress Street, Connell, and we have to walk all the way over to Church Lane and Chester Avenue, which is much further. So I was just a little curious as to why they would take that stop away, because it is going to give a little bit of heartache to people who utilizes it. My second question is with respect to the park equipment. You did say $25,000 came in. I thought I read 30.
30 was from the NFC itself. So the NFC granted 30,000 overall, and then 25,000 came from the Keeping Pennsylvania Beautiful / the Giant Company, their combined effort of donation that we got that grant award as well. And then there's additional funds that we've received as well from different companies that we do business with. And then we're still waiting to hear from a few more.
Do we have a total of donations to date?
I believe
we were trying to reach what we needed, about 180,000 donations.
So the goal was to raise the whole thing if possible, and I believe we're at about 60,000.
Okay, all right. So we still have a ways to go. Okay, all right.
We do, but we did reach out to Crozier, and we're waiting on, because Mercy Fitz said no, but Crozier, the hospitals tend to give the most because they're in line with what this is about, health, wellness. So if anybody has any connections at Crozier of the elected officials, or if anybody wants to reach out and call, the squeaky wheel gets oiled. So we welcome the support and help. Vice President Francis has been very instrumental in helping us with reaching out to people and making sure they get in contact with us. So by all means, anybody else who has any connections or knows anyone or who wants to make calls, we'll be happy to pass on that information and appreciate that assistance.
Okay. The common driveways, did we decide, or did we have any discussions, further discussions with respect to how if we could utilize any of that recovery money, that COVID recovery money, if we could utilize some of that for same, maybe you or Mr. Nichols could answer that, because that's still outstanding.
So when you say, have we had any discussion, who do you mean?
Oh, I don't know. All I do is present the questions. And I know last time we discussed it, it's been a few months with respect to whether we could utilize some of the COVID recovery relief funds, if we could utilize some of the monies to assist with repairing, help to repair some of these common driveways. So
at the time, I believe Mr. Nichols said that he had not received the parameters for which the monies were permissible to be spent. Mr. Nichols, have you received those parameters at this time?
Yes, they did finally come out with everything that's been finalized. That just happened maybe mid-August. The funds reached the bank account maybe 30 days ago. So that is a permissible thing, but we need to meet as the elected body needs to meet so that we can determine how we're going to disperse the funds. Because of the reporting requirements, we have to have a plan in place before we just can go ahead and do that. But a portion of it most certainly can be used. Like one of the things that the parameter says is that we couldn't do it for someone who rents the house, has to be their primary residence. Right. You know, so we just need to put all of those things in place and meet about it in the near future to discuss how we're going to do it.
Oh, that's wonderful news. Thank you.
Mr. Nichols, could I ask that you, schedule a meeting with Councilor Roadcloud and whoever else needs to be a part of that meeting to make sure that we follow up?
So I planned on scheduling a meeting with Councilor Cave and Councilor Roadcloud most certainly, so that we can discuss how we disperse the entire allotment of money, because that needs to be a part of the plan for the next compliance report that is due October 31st. So yes, I most certainly can set that up and we can present the council. Council can approve the plan and we'll move forward from there.
All right, and let's not forget that Ms. Mulvana presented us with a study of what it would cost. So we want to make sure those numbers are still accurate. If maybe she could update that. I know that building materials have kind of skyrocketed lately. So we don't want to be basing our projections off of pre-COVID numbers when it's a during COVID world.
Understood. And again, with the parameters, I don't want to take up too much time, but we probably would be granting the money directly to the homeowner and not a contractor. I think my understanding is that's how it has to be, but we can talk about those details and I can present that. But yes, we will most certainly get with Ms. Mulvana to address those concerns as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Let's move on to our solicitor's report. Mr. Gibbs.
I'm sorry, I'm here. So as the borough manager reported, we've had a series of meetings as it relates to modifications of the shade tree ordinance. And my hope and my desire was to have some level of a draft ordinance prepared for tonight for discussion. And frankly, I don't have it. I'll have it. I'm going to try to circulate a draft ordinance to council, not to vote on next Thursday, but to talk about, so we can try to figure out what we want the ordinance to be and ask for permission to advertise that ordinance for passage in October. And that concludes my report at this time.
Thank you. Let's move on to our. Oh,
Madam President, I have a question.
Yes, Councilor Johnson.
I have a question for the solicitor, if I may.
Yes, ma'am. How are you?
I'm just fine, thank you, and yourself. My question is, did you and Jeff get a chance to actually meet as it was discussed when we left the Zoom meeting?
We have not discussed, Matt. Jeff sent me his notes from the meeting and his suggestions. Councilor Roadcloud also did. I'm going to take those, try to prepare something to meet with Jeff. But Jeff gave me all his notes from what he was looking for and what he was suggesting.
And is that what you're planning on bringing to the floor, or do you plan on having a meeting with those people that attended that Shade Tree Zoom meeting before bringing it to the floor? What is your plan?
My plan is to bring it to the floor and let council have a few months, at least a month, or everyone on council to modify, mark up, and then we can have a discussion at the October council meeting and vote. If there are amendments, I can handle the amendments at that time.
Very good. Lastly, Councilor Roadcloud just stated that being the liaison over a committee and she was left out or something. Please don't leave me out as the liaison over the Public Works Department. I would like to see that, as I stated in the meeting.
I'm going to send it to everybody, ma'am. I'm not going to leave you out. I promise.
Thank you. That's it, Councilor Monroe. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to our tax collectors report.
Good evening, everyone. The collections for the month of August are as follows. For trash, we collected $5,980. For sewer, we collected $7,024.98. For real estate, we collected $11,385.73. The total for the month of August was $24,385.71. I just want to say that the month of August was heavily covered by school taxes. So this concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to our engineers report.
Good evening. Just wanted to report that Garjul is continuing his work on West Cobb's. And last month, council voted to have the right to extend the elevator maintenance contract. So an amendment was sent out to the contractor for that purpose. Last month, the award was made to Arnell Company for the third floor access door and stairwell, and contracts are being prepared, and then we'll have a start date from them. The Borough Hall and Public Library HVAC maintenance system RFQ has been sent to 3 contractors, and we'll have hopefully have a recommendation for an award next week. If not, it'll be next month. The roof leak around the clock tower has been addressed by the contractor, but I think we reported that last month. The borough does have access now to the traffic signal plan, so we are able to proceed with the RFQ for the traffic signal maintenance, and we'll do that. And I don't believe anything else is new. Miranda did, no, I don't think she spoke on this one. The TA set aside grant, there was a meeting with DVRPC, the project manager, which is a requirement before the application gets submitted. So based on that conversation, we are updating the application. They indicated that they will not pay for resurfacing of all of West Cobb's. They'll only do it based on areas that we affect with the curb cut ramps and maybe any traffic signal improvements we do, or if we do install those islands to try to slow traffic, that they would pay for the restoration there. So we're downsizing the project based on that input. The inlet project is continuing, and there was a emergency repair needed on Fern, and that was done yesterday by the storm sewer contractor. And next week, we did mention, I believe, that there was a sinkhole on Elder and Elberon for the, with a sinkhole on a storm sewer sinkhole, and we did meet with the contractor and he knows what he has to do, but in looking back at the motions, we saw that we did not ask for that authorization, so he hasn't started the work, and we'll bring that up next week to get council's authorization to do that work. And we do continue to inspect the McKemmy Court project, and foundations are in. I believe that the code department, the third-party code inspector, has inspected those. And that's it.
Thank you, Eileen. Does the decision to discontinue the service at SEPTA locations impact how we're going to design and repave those streets that you mentioned?
Actually, we did have one of the items in that grant application was to improve the transit stop. And we also had indicated that we had used that was a path to the public transportation. And that was one of the reasons why we were asking for this grant, was to support improvements related to that. So being that it's not definite, I would still keep that in the application and just let it and see what happens when the grant is ultimately awarded. You don't have to accept all the money. You don't have to do everything on the project. So I would just recommend leaving it the way it is and see what happens.
Great. Thank you so much.
I have a question for Eileen.
Councilor Rowe.
So Eileen, as you know, you're aware of some work that was being performed on the 900 block of Duncan Avenue. And as a result of the work, it was left on a Friday. It was a large excavated hole. Looked like it could have been about 10 feet deep, 6 feet wide, uncovered, not properly protecting the pedestrians at all. And I sent pictures, and as a matter of fact, Jeff Wilkinson reached out to, while he was on vacation, he reached out to the contractor who was responsible for leaving that hazardous condition. I did follow up in an email that the contractor absolutely knew better. The residents were upset, as they should have been. They didn't know who to call at the borough. Borough's closed Friday night. Nobody's answering the phone, and they have this hazardous condition. So do we have anything in place with respect to when these contractors come in? First of all, who is responsible for making sure contractors secure the areas when they're performing that type of work, especially on a Friday, and they're not coming back until Monday? That's the first question. Who's responsible for that? My second question is, when that happened, who should we call, the residents call, when something like that happens? Again, like I said, the borough was closed. Nobody was there. I sent emails and I made some phone calls. But if I wasn't around, I don't know what would have been done. And that condition would have existed the entire weekend, which is just so unacceptable. Third, do we have any penalties in the contract with respect to when these contractors leave a hazardous condition behind, not leaving the work site in a properly secured condition? I did ask in that email that someone speak to the contractor. I don't know if that happened or not, but at the end of the day, we're giving them, work. We're paying them good money to perform a work, and they're treating a community like this. That's not right. That's not right. So did we have any conversations with this contractor to absolutely let him or her know this is unacceptable, it will not happen again? Are there any penalties that could be assessed, or do we discuss any of these penalties in the contract itself? Did a conversation take place with the contractor? Or did we just have them fix the problem and everything was good?
So
Okay, to answer that, wait, let me just answer my part of this, Jeff, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I did speak with the owner of the company. He had been away that weekend. I did not get the email, so Jeff handled it and contacted the owner. I did not know about the problem until Monday. And I did meet with the contractor on that Monday, and he was, if anything, was more upset than you probably are. He was so furious with his staff because they know better. It is in the contract that they have to protect the trench. His employees knew better, so he was livid. There is language, they are responsible for maintaining their trenches. They are to make the site safe. That's a liability for him as well, because if anything were to happen, he would have been the one sued. So he absolutely has taken it into hand with his employees. He actually, what do you call that when you send them home without pay, whatever, oh goodness.
Suspension?
What is it?
Suspended?
Suspended,
Furlough?
that's the word, suspended the foreman. So I do feel that you won't ever see this happen again. But there is language in the contract related to having a safe site. Specifically as to penalties, there's no language in there that actually says if you do something wrong, we'll take 10%, whatever. But the end result is if something happens, then of course, I believe that you would have the right to say we're not paying something. As far as who residents would call, you should always call 911. Anytime that there is a safety issue, 911 is the appropriate phone number to call. And they would have handled it. They would have gotten a hold of either Jeff or the management. So I think that that perhaps maybe I know with sewer emergencies, residents, even though it's been said many, many times, if you have a backup, call 911. Don't call the main number, don't call Public Works, call 911. It is considered an emergency. The same would go with this. If someone feels unsafe and there is an unsafe condition, call 911. So I'll talk to Miranda. Maybe we can put something in the newsletter. Maybe that can be our topic for this newsletter, and just really explain to people that don't hesitate. Safety comes first, and you really need to call 911. So, and it has been said at many meetings. It's just that not everyone hears the meeting. So I think putting it in the newsletter might be a good approach for us.
And Jeff, you had something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of address who spoke with the contractor. I also spoke with him in person that same Monday, and he said the same exact thing Eileen just, kind of spoke on. And, when you call the Public Works Department after hours, the answering machine does have for, any sewer emergencies or immediate emergencies, please, hang up and dial 911. So, always feel free to call Public Works first, and then, after hours, call 911.
Okay, thank you. And Jeff, thank you. Thank you so much, because you did mention you wasn't even in town, but you received my email, the pictures, and you realized it was a serious situation, and you did everything you could to rectify it. So thank you.
Yep.
All right. Let's move on to our finance report.
Hey guys, nothing major, but I do want to be able to set up a brief meeting and maybe in the next week or two to discuss parking revenues, and I believe that kind of also falls under, I'm gonna say police, but just get a chance to review answering questions, talk about current zones of revenue, the municipal lots, etc. Is that something that we couldn't schedule, Mrs. Presswood?
I'm sorry, Councilor Cade, you want a meeting for the sewer lot? Say that again?
No, parking.
Sure. Do you have a set date in mind or time at this point?
No, I don't, but
I'll follow up with you.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got tonight.
Okay.
Thanks, Councilor Key. We'll move on to ordinance and zoning.
Hey, how everybody doing tonight?
All right, how are you?
Doing well. So, monthly report for August, zoning use application, 446 Church Lane, sign has been approved. Zoning hearing application for child care in home at 701 South Union Avenue. Hotspots, trash issue, grass issue at Washington Woods is a constant. We have inspectors going out there on a daily basis. Revere Crossing dumpster area. Again, we have inspectors going out there on a daily basis, making sure the upkeep is upkept to our standards. 1100 Chester Avenue, the smoke shop. That's also been on our radar also. Citation has been issued as of 9:05. Parkview Court also the issue with trash that been taken care of on a daily basis also. Action items, grass and trash issues throughout Borough. Inspectors writing violation notices and citations. Spot inspections occurring daily at the Borough stores. Notices were dropped off in the area where issues was blocking the trash trucks. 910 South Longacre Boulevard has removed debris from the area around the property. A shed will be implemented sooner. Closed items. Tree removal direction per the council have been halted. Upcoming items. The McKinley Senior Housing starting construction in the near future, or they have started construction. The 735 Church Lane work still in progress. The Panda House permits has been submitted at 547 Church Lane. The fence has been installed by Public Works, and the guardrail is pending by SEPTA. So paid property maintenance abatements for the month of August will be $12,652. Total to date, $24,173 and some odd change. Full department revenue. August 30,844. Cold workload of August. Violation in total 112. Resales 23. Rental inspections 35. Citations issued 25. Court cases 5. Requests for actions 28. Fire investigations 1. Health inspections 25. Vehicle violation notices 19. And that concludes my report.
Quick question, if I might. Is there any clarification where the SEPTA guardrail that you mentioned was going?
So as of right now, it's still pending. We're just waiting to hear back from SEPTA.
So the actual locations are going to be at the 400 block of Cypress.
Oh, okay.
And the 400 block of Holly. So at the 400 block of Holly, SEPTA, when their engineers came out, they deemed that the fence that was there at the end of the 400 block of Holly, it wasn't necessary as there's an entrance to the platform. So we took it out. They're gonna put a guardrail in.
Oh, good. Thanks for following up on that, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Councilor Royal Cloud, for following up too.
Yeah. 2 quick questions, if I may.
Sure.
First question, 701 South Union Avenue. There was no attachments, or I just didn't know how to pull it up. So it says see attachment. I couldn't pull up attachments. Second question. I reported, think maybe about a month or so ago, about the grass that grows out of the sidewalks onto the street and on the sidewalk in the whole of Rundell Avenue. I don't know if an inspector went out to give a warning, but if they did go out to give a warning, I think it might behoove them to go out and do whatever the next step is, because no one is paying attention. That is the homeowner's responsibility.
Correct. Okay, so to answer your first question, okay, no problem. So to answer your first question, so 701 South Union Avenue, the resident inside that property is looking to put a daycare. So that was that. That was the attachment that was should have been with that. It reads off. I'm gonna read it to you. So section 300A, permitted principal use in a medium density residential district. Land building or permission.
Pardon me, could it just possibly be sent out to the counselors, all counselors, not just to me, for their, so that they can review it as well?
Sure, that'll be no issue.
All righty, thank you, there. What about the grass, on Rundell?
So I'll have to concur with my my fellow inspectors to see what else was done with handling that situation on Rundell.
All righty, thank you. That was it, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, I have a couple of questions and actually a statement as well. So with respect to, I just want to reiterate the importance of us updating our current codes and ordinances in addition to our zoning ordinances. They are absolutely outdated and antiquated. None of our current codes and ordinances really deal with modern day issues that we are experiencing today. I know that I've asked on several occasions to sit down with the code department and work on creating some ordinances that could help us with our quality of life here in Yeadon. And to be quite honest, it hasn't been done yet. I understand people are busy, very busy. But this is something that deserves attention and time, because we failed, not we literally, but because we failed in the past years ago to address any issue, any codes and ordinances with respect to marijuana facilities. Now we're being plagued today with this issue. So we don't want this to happen again. We don't. So we need to really take it serious and sit down and really hammer out what needs to be updated and what needs to be created. That's number one. Number two, the apartment building on Church Lane. I have reported on several occasions with respect to it having a cardboard or some kind of plywood at the window, because they don't have the proper windows to fit the air conditioning units that are being used. Well, that is against our codes and ordinance. It says you're not supposed to have any plywood up at your window. I mean, for obvious reasons. So I was told that, you know, the property owner is aware and they don't know what else to do, basically, because the air conditioners don't fit in those windows and they need to be able to shut it off. Bottom line, we got to do something. That can't be. I don't want to drive past Church Lane and look and see plywood in somebody's window, especially an apartment building, and now it's like 3 or 4 windows. It reminds me of, like, I don't know, Little Beirut or something. So no, I don't want to see that. And I'm sure no one else wants to see that. So we need to really address that. Also, we have some issues with illegal home health cares. The residents have been expressing their concerns with respect to all these minivans being parked taking up the parking spaces, the, you know, passenger vans, and they're running these at-home health cares, codes and ordinance. Again, we need to have it addressed. Where is like a free fall going on, and we're not doing anything. So to be quite honest with you, I am tired of repeating myself. I hate to repeat myself, but you know, I mean, this is it. We got to do something. We got to do something. Mr. Nichols, you're aware of my concerns, and I know you're working diligently to try to rectify some of these concerns. And I also understand you're only one person, and you can't do it all. But we have some serious issues that need to be addressed, and we need to start addressing them now, not later, now. We need to think about also with respect to our fees and penalties. I mean, they're the same fees from what, 1902? I don't know. It's so old. We need to come up to the 21st century. So there you have it. I just told you a couple of the complaints. Another apartment building. Every weekend it's a bunch of trash, mattresses that's uncovered, couches, chairs, all kinds of nonsense sitting out there, you know, near the dumpsters, hanging out the dumpsters, all kind of nonsense. And I was told that, you know, well, their hauler only comes on a certain day. That's not my problem. If you know you have so much trash, you just got to pay for the hauler to come out 2 times a week, maybe not 1 time. That's the price of doing business. But don't have me feel living uncomfortably just so you can feel comfortable within what your business, what you're doing with your business. That's not right. That's not right. We have to be respectful of each other and the space that we share. So we got to do something, code department. We got to do something.
So to answer one of your questions on Washington Woods, as of this week, the air conditioners have been removed from those windows, and the cardboard is no longer, or the plywood is no longer in those windows.
Very good.
That's all I have for right now.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Nothing about the illegal home health cares? Nothing yet.
So
We're still working on it.
I have been through the McDade Shopping Center quite often. I did notice there's about like 12 minivans that were used for like handicap accessible uses. I'm not sure where they went because I had myself personally, I had stickered them. I stickered them abandoned, and then within that week, they disappeared. So I'm not exactly sure where they disappeared to. I guess I have to go out and look, you know, check the residential streets to make sure they're not on the residential streets.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Mr. White. No, you misunderstood me. No, I meant actual residential homes turned into illegal home health care businesses. That's what I'm referring to.
Council roll call.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you an executive session about this before the next.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Very good.
All right.
A comment, Madam Secretary, Madam President.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to clear up something that was discussed earlier. I know there's overlapping jurisdictions with a lot of different committees. The barriers for SEPTA came about through the Public Safety Committee, where, and yes, Councilor Roadcloud, credit for pushing us on that end, but that was a lot of work to try to get SEPTA or try to make heads and tails, starting with SEPTA, and they didn't respond to letters, a lot of other things. And finally, I called my buddy, Eddie Wallace, who's the head of maintenance there, and he finally responded and came out, and then hooked him up with Jeff Wilkinson, and that's why we retrofitted, you know, what the borough is responsible for and what SEPTA was responsible for. So they're going to put the 2 barriers at the end of those 2 streets. But that's how that came about. But thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Officer White, does that conclude your ordinance and zoning report?
Yes, ma'am, at this time. Any other questions?
All right, thank you very much. We will move on to our
Yep.
Public Works Department.
Good afternoon to all. First, I would like to give kudos to the Public Works Department. I received many, many phone calls in reference to Public Works, how they see them out on the street doing whatever it is, I guess that's in their daily routine to do. I even stopped and gave a clap to some of the workers who was doing abatement properties here in the community. So a shout out to Public Works Department. Jeff Wilkerson will read the report.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. So announcements and events for September. We have a yard waste drop off tomorrow, September 10th, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. We have an e-waste drop off date Friday, September 24th, between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. For October, we have a yard waste drop off date on October 8th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and an e-waste event from Friday, October 29th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. We sold 4 vehicles this month through Municipid. The first was a 2000 Crown Vic. It sold for $1,550. The second sold today. It was a 2011 Crown Vic. It sold for $625. The third was a 2002 Dodge Ram. It sold for $1,250. And the winning bid was placed for the 1982 Chevy bucket truck for $3,950. The final sale will take place once the title is received from PennDOT mid-September. Grass cutting and property maintenance. The grass hasn't slowed down one bit this summer, so the guys, the grass crews out there every week cutting. The abatements, as Councilor Johnson said, they were cut this week. The sweeper year to date on street dirt totals, we're at 138 tons. Currently, I'm in the process of looking into getting a new street sweeper. As mentioned before, we have a mechanical street sweeper. It's really not as effective as we need it to be. We have to look into a regenerative air sweeper. It'll do a better job cleaning the streets, and it's better for our stormwater management program. That's less debris and particles in our storm sewers. Our current sweeper has a good trade-in value. I actually got one quote in this week, and the trade-in value for our current sweeper that we have is $100,000. So that's pretty good. Sanitary sewer maintenance. The new program I implemented will be rolled out at the end of September. The town will be broken into 4 zones. Each month, a different zone of town will have its sanitary sewer lines maintained. This will allow us to maintain every zone of town 3 times a year. Emergency calls will still be handled as normal and take priority. We had a department-wide training on operations of the new sewer truck that was completed on 8/25. H.A. DeHart, who we purchased the vehicle from, sent out a subject matter expert to lead the training. Our annual MS4 training, our annual MS4 outfall testing was completed. This year, 7 outfalls were inspected. If water flow was present from outfall, water samples were taken. From there, I sent the water samples out to a lab for further testing. Once lab results are returned, the report will be finalized and submitted to NDI. Street painting, due to COVID, our street paint order, I ordered it at I believe it was probably the end of June. It just arrived, so we're a little behind. So over the next few weeks, you'll see the guys out painting crosswalks. Our entire order of white paint came in. However, we're still waiting on our yellow paint. That's still back ordered. Special highway maintenance. So we talked about the 400 block of cypress and the 400 block of holly, the SEP defense. And yeah, that sums up my report.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Wilkerson.
One question for either Jeff or Eileen. Well, it's not a question, it's a concern. Over here on Maple Terrace, closest to Whitby Avenue, Could someone please come out and see? I don't know what a sinkhole look like. I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. But it does look like the grass is sinking closest to Whitby Avenue. And the other day when I went past there, it looked like a hole was migrating close to the grassy area. Today when I rode past, it looked like something was removed there. But could someone please go out and just take a check? I don't know who would do that. I don't know if it would be Jeff or Eileen.
Yeah, that's not a problem. I'll take a look at it first thing tomorrow morning.
All righty, thank you. And
Yep.
if Jeff has nothing else to say, that concludes our report.
All right, thank you so much. Next, we will move on to our public safety report. And we will have the mayor call the departments, police, fire, and emergency management.
Certainly. Yeah, we met last Saturday of last month, and nothing new to report except for what I just reported, that we did get movement on the SEPTA piece, and great example of teamwork and working with another municipality or organization to get our deliverables addressed. So nothing more to say about that, except that Jeff worked with my buddy at SEPTA for several weeks to finally get that addressed. So just want to thank Jeff for that. But on that note, we'll first call on Chief Paparo is away. I believe Lieutenant Burns is on the line. Yeah. Have anything to add, Lieutenant?
Yes, good evening, everybody. Yeah, the chief wasn't able to be here tonight, but he had submitted his report. Just to touch on one major thing with the report, I just want everybody to know our crime is down this year, mainly with the property crimes, the thefts, the break-ins in the vehicles, and the auto thefts. And that attributes to the officers out there on the street. They're really pushing and patrolling, stopping anybody who's walking around at night, trying the door handles, stuff like that. So just wanted to point that out. Councilor Roadcloud, to your point with the issue with that hole and not being covered, and I just want to reiterate, absolutely call 911. All of our officers have Mr. Wilkinson's number, and we'll call him immediately. If we can't get in touch with him, we call Mr. Pizzullo, and either one of them will answer no matter what, whether on their vacation or not, and we'll get the situation addressed. Other than that, we are obviously aware of the marijuana dispensary and working on things we can do. We've moved the camera up there, our trailer camera, that will be there. And we do understand there's going to be traffic issues, and we're trying to work on our end to mitigate that and do the best we can.
Okay, the only thing I have to follow up, I know I talked to the chief about Saturday's march.
Yes, we have 3 officers coming in for that to make sure everybody's safe and able to get their point across. And again, we have 3 officers coming in for it. We'll have 3 officers on the street, so we'll have plenty of police presence to make sure everybody's safe.
Yeah. Again, appreciate the job the police department does. I know we've had some issues with going over our budget, part-timer issues and the like, but the good thing is that we've seen the bang for the buck, and crime has really been down. And it's really amazed me as I talk to other mayors and police chiefs, because they're experiencing a big spike in crime all around us. In Upper Darby, there's a lot of car thefts and hijackings and the like, and murders. And so let's continue to, the police do a good job. And if you see something, say something, call 911. That also helps a lot in mapping out where the high crime areas are, and it creates a paper trail something that we could utilize. So great job there. I don't see Fire Chief. Mrs. Stokes is not here. I don't think Mr. Solomon, if you have anything else to add for Rufus.
No, not at this moment.
Okay.
Madam President, I have a question, if I might, regarding crossing guards.
All right, thank you. But we can also obtain the emergency management report next week from Mr. Stokes. Can we make sure we have that available then? And our fire department report.
Sure.
All right, Mr. Cave, Councilor Cave, thank you.
Yeah, hi, Lieutenant Burns. I don't know if this is a question might fall under police, and if you don't have the full answers, we could talk about it again next meeting. Crossing guard coverage. Will we say we have full coverage now that school has started back throughout the borough, or are we still short on coverage for all the major intersections?
I can tell you, we have full coverage starting tomorrow. And I was happy to let our guys know because, excuse me, when we don't have coverage, one of our guys has to come off the street.
Right.
And our last corner we had to worry about was Church and McDade. And our parking enforcement officer was covering that yesterday and today. We have a crossing guard starting there tomorrow, and that was the last corner we had to worry about. So all of our corners are covered. I'm going to start working on getting a substitute crossing guard in case somebody calls out sick. If somebody does call out sick, the police department covers that corner to make sure it's covered.
Great, and thanks for that. And what time usually are they starting in the morning?
The Church and McDade starts earlier. I'm not exactly sure what time they start. I'd have to double check that. But the other corners start at 10 of 8 and they go for an hour. And then in the afternoon, they start at, don't quote me on this. I think it's 3:30 and they go to 4:30, or it's 3:20 and they go to 4:20. It's an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon.
Okay, so the library pickup, the one in the mornings, I think between about 7:30, there's a lot of the external, the out of William Penn buses land there and pick up kids. Just my observation this morning, one, there wasn't a guard out there that early, but a lot of cars don't adhere to the stop for the school buses when they put the arm out, the stop arm. And I actually witnessed one car not even adhere to the regular stop sign at Arbor and what's that, Longacre, and went right through 2 school bus arms. So I don't know if that's something that we could try to pay a little extra attention to. Folks are just in a hurry, but you know, those
Yeah,
are babies.
if that's an issue in that area, then we can get a car out there in the morning. The bus drivers they're supposed to report that to us as well. We obviously we're only 2 days into school. But if that's an issue in that intersection, well, absolutely, we can put a car there in the mornings to once they see the car there, then they don't see the car, they don't know if it's there or not, and hopefully that shows them to stop, or if they get stopped, and then they know there could be a car there.
Cool, thank you.
Absolutely.
I actually have a question. If I can.
Councilor Rothfeld.
Thank you. It's actually an excellent question presented by one of the residents in the chat, where she's asking whether or not we could look into getting pedestrian crosswalk countdown LED timers on our main crosswalks. I think that would be great, especially at large intersections such as Bailey and Church Lane. That should also, help with keeping, pedestrians safe when crossing, because a lot of times the light just changes from green, then it yellow, and then red. and it's really fast. But if you have a countdown, people usually say, okay, it's only 10 seconds left. I can run really fast, or they'll say, you know what, I can't really run that fast. I'm gonna just wait it out to the next one. So is that something that we could possibly look into?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Uh-huh.
And Ms. Presswood had talked about how we had met with PennDOT, and I know they're looking at the intersection of Church and Bailey. And I agree. I think it'd be a great idea to add in. I know Lansdowne and Baltimore have that where it's vocal and it tells you, it counts down and you can hear it when you're sitting at the red light. So maybe that's something we could add in with PennDOT when they look into redoing that intersection.
Okay,
That'd
yeah,
be-
that's
that-
great. Thank you, Hakima. Thank you. And I have one more question. With respect to enforcement of the parking meters, I have noticed on several occasions, especially in our municipal lots, those parking meters are not being enforced. I don't know what's going on with respect to, I don't expect the police officers to enforce, the parking meters, but I understand we do have someone specifically that is, assigned those duties. But since we have these old archaic meters, is it a possibility that we could look into, and I know all these things take money, but we gotta spend a little money to, do things the right way. Can we possibly look into those electronic parking kiosks that actually cut down the amount of time that people actually have to be on their feet to actually do the enforcement? And it's like one shop. You go right to the kiosk and take out monies if they use currency, or you don't have to if they use their credit card because it's all electronic.
I don't know if I could answer that because I don't know if that falls under the police department's decision. We'll enforce whatever the borough decides. So it's not that we're against it. I just don't know if that falls under us.
Yeah, I remember us discussing that a couple years ago. I would say 5, 6 years ago, when the percentage firm was in charge, and I believe we approved a new what do you call it? A meter, a more electronic meter. I don't know whatever happened to it though. So maybe
So we
something.
didn't have the cellular service needed to operate those types of meters. So they were never installed on Penn Street. That's where our former public works director was going to install them, but we didn't have the proper wiring to get it installed. So that is it turned out to be a huge project that you couldn't follow through with because it was extremely expensive. But we can definitely continue the conversation about it, and if we can find money's available to accommodate the cellular service required to operate those meters, then we'll see what we can do. But thank you for those ideas, and thank you for the police report. Does that end your report,
I
Lieutenant
believe
Burns?
Yes, ma'am, that ends my report unless there's any more questions.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And lastly, we have our recreation report.
Good evening,
Councilor Francis.
Good evening. Yes, good evening, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. Madam President, we don't have anything to report at this time. Committee, we're still monitoring this pandemic. It seems like it's gotten worse. We got the variant, we got the Delta, now you have something called the Mu. So again, we have anything to report at this time.
So is there something to report that may be about maybe Mr. Hunter?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Mr. Hunter, he was honored, at the University of Maryland. He was honored this past weekend. And it should be in the new newsletter. And I think we sent the email. So I don't have the full report, but I will have it for next week.
All right. Thank you so much. We love to celebrate our own.
About that. Yes, I'm sorry about that.
All right. Well, this has been a wonderfully eventful evening. And thank you all for coming out. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Madam President.
Second.
Thank you. This meeting is concluded. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.